All right, we're live.
I think it worked.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
I like to see that number start showing people at the top. Now we're in there. Okay.
There
It's
we
showing
go.
Is this where we're in trouble now? Two of
Yeah.
us. We don't know what we're doing.
Hey,
Well, welcome.
everybody. Welcome to our new channel called Sergeant's Talk TV. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jason.
Yep. You don't see this very often. An Army guy working with the Marine and vice versa. You don't even when we're active duty, you didn't see that a lot. You know what I mean? You knew the Marines were over there by themselves,
Yeah.
in Iraq and stuff, and the Army was over there by themselves and stuff like that. But it's kind of good that we're doing this.
I'm loving it. And honestly, you say that you don't see it a lot, but I spent almost my entire career always being with the Army soldiers.
Really?
Because the MOS I was in, being in tanks, we piggybacked from the Army.
Oh, okay.
And so we took their, what they said was junk, and we had to repaint it and called it new.
Yeah.
But a lot of our support and all that stuff. So like our schoolhouses, all that stuff, I actually spent a lot of time.
So did you guys operate at Benning, or were you at Knox and then went to Benning when the armor school moved there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when I went to school, it was still at Fort Knox. But then I think around 2011, 2012, they did a bit that base realignment, and they moved everything that was at Knox down to Fort Benning.
Okay.
So our schoolhouses for the tank stuff went there. Our duty stations still stayed the same, but the actual schools moved. And
okay.
So yeah, I always loved the banter back and forth. But there's been a couple deployments though that they did that. They're like, oh, where's the Marine section at? And we would be put way back out away from everybody else. We weren't allowed to people, I guess.
To socialize.
Yeah, they're like, dude, you guys, nobody go over there. Those guys, they're just trouble.
Yeah. So, hey, let's check out and see who we got in the chat.
Absolutely.
All right.
We're seeing. I would scroll up to the top, but that's a lot.
I seen Lila Newton in here earlier, and she's a Navy veteran. And then the next one, I see Butler. He's Navy.
And then we got Brother Tim there at Ridge Life.
Yep. Thank you for the shout out, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. We appreciate you. There's Piggy's Piddles. So I know right now, Piggy, Semper Fi, I'm not the only Marine in the room.
There you go. Yep. Hey, there's Southern Blessed Homestead. He was Chair Force.
Oh.
Yeah. When they deployed the Air Force, they stay in hotels and stuff.
Oh, I got one experience when I went through MOS, or not MOS school. They sent me through Humvee school, and we drove as a long drive. We went to one of the Air Force bases, and we seen their barracks. And I was like, "What do you mean barracks? This is a hotel." Like, it was crazy.
Well, we had Air Force because we had our CAS people call for fire guys. That was Air Force, and they stayed in the barracks, in the Army barracks. And they were so horrible, I'll put it that way, that they also got to get their separate rations and housing allowance also while staying in our barracks.
Really?
Yeah.
That rough life that we have to live. And then,
well, we didn't have enough square footage for them, and they had to use hallway bathrooms. And so that wasn't to the Air Force standard. So they got their BAQ and their BHS and stuff like that. So we were substandard.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, they stuck us. I think we went training, and I can't remember which base it was now, but it was, the old, they were World War II barracks. But they were still I guess, operational enough that they shoved us. That's where the Marines got shoved when we went there to do training. Is they're like, the roof only leaks in those spots. Just stay away from there.
Yeah. Hey, there's Goat Days. They're in here.
There's Sammy and David.
TNT Adventures is here. Evelyn Newman, Simply Jan. Hey, there's one of my favorite Marines, Hat Creek. Dawn over at Hat Creek. She's a Marine.
She is, and I hadn't. Adventure America. They're saying USMC, so must be a Marine too.
There you go.
And
there's David Moffett.
Lumpy Burke says Navy veteran disabled.
Yep. Lone Cowboy Adventures in here.
And we got the lovely.
We say Ridge Life is he's a submariner. He's Navy. He did his deployments under the polar cap. Man, that's got to be a lonely life, man.
And I think I've only talked to probably less than a handful of people that ever were on submarines, and right. I couldn't imagine. I mean, I looked forward to the opportunity as a Marine to go on the Navy ships. They would do 6-7 month deployments, 8 months sometimes. And but for my MOS, it was such a small amount of people that got to go, so it was almost like winning the lottery to be able to do it and go. And then the one time I finally got accepted to be able to do it, and then they took our ships and stuff away and flew us to Afghanistan instead.
Yeah.
So we did some training on the ships, but not to the level of the submariners and stuff, because I couldn't imagine being underwater for that long.
Hey, there's Melinda Dobson. She says her father was Army and one uncle Air Force and one uncle in the Navy. So they were trying to hit all the branches of services there in that family. Hey, there's Glenn and Shannon Salty Life. He's saying repping the King of Battle. So he was if he was in the Army, that's a 13 banger. When I was in,
they had another Army fellow Army soldier for you there. Gary Adjuncted Gems came in.
Yep. And I know that Jan's husband, he's a vet too. I don't know if he was Army. Yeah. What's that?
I think so. Can
you read it? Something what?
You start meeting more and more people, and I'm sure in here it's going to make it even worse when we start meeting all the vets and then trying to remember what branch or where they served or anything.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to remember my name most days.
Isn't it true, though?
Oh, it is.
I don't know if I hit my head one too many times, but like short-term stuff I don't remember, but I remember stuff so far back, and I talk to Terry all the time and other people, and they said, man, you should write a book. And I always wanted to write a book, but I didn't want it to be a serious book. I wanted it to be the side, everything that could get a soldier in Article 15, that kind of book. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because before I became a sergeant, I had 3 Article 15s before I became a sergeant.
Really?
I couldn't get it together in the beginning,
I tried getting some. They had assigned me into a job position that I didn't want.
Yeah.
And told me, well, you just have to do it for 6 months. Well, I think it was
Here's the first slide.
Yeah. 3 years later, I was still doing it, and I'm like, well, and I tried every way because one of the great things, there are ways of technically, but you can't get fired. Like I was like, just send me home. I'm done. Like I don't, and I'm sure eventually as this channel gets along, I'll be able to share some of them stories of, but I was like, I've never been fired from a job. Like, can I get fired from this one? And everything I tried wouldn't work.
Hey, so just a heads up to everybody in here. As we advertise on here, there will be probably some adult content, not mainly from us, but from guests in the future and stuff like that. So it is adult content. We want you to stay in here, and we will do our best not to get military mouth on you. Okay. where every other word is a cuss word, and I don't cuss. So I try to. That was the hardest thing for me to break. You know what I mean? Because as a sergeant, as a non-commissioned officer, in the military, I don't know how many times per day. I probably couldn't count how many times I got mad or got pissed off at somebody doing something the wrong way or not doing it the way it's supposed to be done and stuff like that. And especially shortcuts. That was my short fuse. That was my short fuse all day long. So
yeah, and my guys knew by the time I got later on to where I was a sergeant and a staff sergeant, they knew that if I just raised my voice, they had done messed up. They were like, "Wait a minute, staff sergeant never gets mad. If his voice gets above his normal talking decibel, wait a minute, what did we do wrong? How do we fix it?
Or where do we hide?"
Well, there was a few times it was that because they're like, "We're never going home, are we?"
Yeah.
And I normally let them off early, but if it was they really got to me that day, I was no. Guess what, guys? We're staying late. And
hey, there's Charlene Grady. Yeah.
So we military mouthed a little bit here because Ken and Lone Cowboy, thanks for coming in. But he said, "Hey guys, can you explain what the Article 15 and other terms mean to people who don't know?"
So an Article 15 is non-judicial punishment, meaning you don't go to court. Your commander at the lowest level, which is usually a captain, is your company commander, can impose that on you when you have your head up your 6 o'clock for whatever reason, and that's your rear end, the 6 o'clock. So when you do something wrong, anything that's against the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is a big, thick book, anything you do wrong in there, they can take your rank, they can take your money, they can put you on restriction for, I think a company commander can do it for 14 days.
14 or 15 days, something like that.
So 2 weeks of restriction, take your money, take your rank, instead of going to a court martial. So that's what the Article 15 is.
Yeah.
And it's used quite often.
It's kind of like, so if anybody's worked, like a normal job or whatever, it's you getting a write-up at work. And, as long as it isn't, normally the Article 15s were something that say even at work, like, hey, I, broke something. All right, they've got to do an Article 15, write up on it to where you're not necessarily going to lose your job, but you're going to be uncomfortable for it.
Yeah.
They used to, I don't know if the Army had done that. I don't know. The Marine Corps used to have it where, what was it called? CCP platoon, correctional custody platoon. So if you had a Marine that was really messing up bad, you could send them over there instead of doing, say, an Article 15 or any bad paperwork or possibly send it like break time. You could send them over there for like a week to 2 weeks where they're literally breaking rocks and police calling the base. And
the company commanders had the authority in the Army to send people to Fort Riley, Kansas, to the Army's retraining brigade. It's kind of like jail, but not quite jail. But it's your last chance before they could say, okay, instead of putting him in jail in a court martial, a judge can send him to retraining brigade. They don't have that no more.
No.
That was back in the day. And the reason I knew about it was when I was an MP, I worked AWOL apprehension back in the late 70s and early 80s. And I used to, back then, we used to go and track them down like bounty hunters, or somebody, they'd get pulled over by a cop and it says, oh, he's AWOL, so we'll hold him. They call the Army or whatever, usually a local recruiting station. Then they contact somebody, say, hey, we got a runner over here. and then that's where I'd fly to, pick them up, and then take them to Fort Riley or take them back to their unit and stuff like that. But they don't even look for them no more.
No,
That's out. I mean, if you get caught somewhere, then they say, okay, we'll take them, and then they just process you out the military on a bad conduct discharge.
I'd say I knew of one Marine kind of early on in my career that went AWOL, and I don't remember where. I think he went back to his hometown or something, but he didn't want anything to do with it, and he just left. Went back, started got a house to rent, started a job, was doing all this stuff, and they so he was gone for probably 6-8 months.
Yeah.
And nobody had heard from him, nobody knew what's going on. And then all of a sudden he just shows up one day.
Yeah.
And we're like, what are you doing here? And come to find out, that's how it had happened. Is they I think he had a taillight out or something. It was a traffic stop, but the cops arrested him, got a hold of the Marine Corps, said, hey, we've got your Marine here, and they brought him back. I think he spent 30 days in the brig, and then they just sent him back to the unit to finish out because he was really close to being at the end of his contract anyway. So they just sent him back, and then they finished his contract. But I was like, he'd been out there 6-8 months just living a life.
Yeah. Hey, there's Gillum Farms. Johnny.
Yeah, I seen Christine actually put, my dad is gone, but he was a Korean and Vietnam vet. His brother John was retired Air Force, and another uncle was an Army Korean vet that received a Purple Heart.
Oh, wow. I'm proud to say I never received a Purple Heart because Purple Hearts hurt. That's what we say in the Army. Yeah, you don't want one of those.
Yeah, that is definitely a medal or award that you are not wanting.
Yeah.
So Gary, I'd love to hear this story one of these days. Don't run the gate at Aberdeen Proving Grounds at 140 mile an hour drunk.
Yeah.
I can't see that going well at all.
Yeah. Hey, so let's get into why we joined the military. And I'm gonna let you go first. And just let everybody know what prompted you and what encouraged you, or did a judge say you go into the military? And we heard that. We talked about that earlier. I don't know how true that was back in the day, and it could have been, especially during the draft.
Yeah, I would say that the only time I could see that statement actually being true was during a draft.
Yeah.
To where they're already requiring, of age males to go. So, hey, if you don't want to go serve time in jail or prison, we'll send you overseas and you can fight for your country. And but that would be the only time. So obviously, with that being said, it was a volunteer service. We volunteered. I chose to join the Marine Corps, and
why did you choose the Marine Corps?
Well, and that's probably one of the greatest parts, and I love actually telling the story, and because it made a lot of decisions in my younger years different. Like, I had to think a little bit differently because of I was in middle school, and I always remember I have an uncle, well, many of them, but I have one uncle that's a Marine. And we didn't get to see him often because he was still active duty in the Marine Corps. And he fought in Desert Storm. I don't know all of his military history, but I know he was in Okinawa. He spent a lot of time all over the U.S. in different bases. And I know he did recruiting duty, and he was a drill instructor. So, but I seen how my uncle conducted himself when he would come home on leave, whether it was a holiday or, just whenever he had vacation time. And I watched him. He got up in the morning, even being on leave. He would get up in the morning before most everybody else, but I knew because I was a super early riser anyways. Yeah. And I would see him get up. He'd have a little bit of his coffee, water, and then all of a sudden he's tying up his running shoes, and he's he's still at his, sometimes it was just shorts and a t-shirt, but a lot of time it was his Marine Corps stuff. And he went and ran. And I'm like, what? Nobody's even awake. Nobody's even at breakfast. You're running? I never ran with him back then, and I wanted to, but it triggered something to me that maybe I'm going to try that. Like, just the way that he carried himself, the way that he acted, I'm like, I'm going to go try for runs. And I was like, I'm not a runner. This is a bad plan. But it caused me to get into like bicycling. So I would bicycle everywhere as a typical young teenage, even before teen years. So I said right then and there, and I don't remember exactly what instance that he was home on leave, but I'd asked him, I said, what do you do? Like, we don't see you, but a couple times a year. You're always wearing these horrible looking glasses, because he wore the like boot camp style. He didn't even go by
birth control glasses.
He wore the BCGs, the birth control glasses. And I said, what do you do? Like, what is your job? Like, how have you gone all over the world? And he told me, he's like, well, I'm a Marine. Oh, I need to find out what this means. And so I said right then and there, and I was 7th, 8th grade probably, and I'm like, that's what I want to be. I want to be a Marine. Like, if I can be like him and be able to walk around with the confidence he has, and just the way that he was with everybody, and so that's what I did. I made sure no matter how much shenanigans I got into or could possibly participate in through high school, everything for me through high school was, I'm going to be a Marine. I actually went to my recruiter before I wasn't even old enough for him to talk to me. I think I was like 15 or 16 the first time I found a recruiter, because he had come to the high school. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, I want to be a Marine. What do I need to do? And he's like, oh, well, here's my card. Give me a call. And so I had called him, and he's like, well, what grade are you in? And I was probably 10th grade at that point. And, or no, I was a junior. I was 11th grade. And he's like, well, I can't really talk to you right now. I said, what do you mean? Like, I've got friends that are the class ahead of me. Like, they're already coming to see you. Like, they did the late entry program. They're doing all this stuff. And he's like, well, you're more than welcome to ride along. And I'm like, all right, cool. So then I got to his office, and he's like, I can't talk to you. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I've said for years, I want to be a Marine. I'm here. What do I need to do? And he's like, well, you need to be old enough. Like, I think I probably had just turned 16. He's like, but you're a junior. Like, you need to be a senior, and you need to, be 18, have a high school diploma. He gave me the whole spiel. And I'm like, yeah, here's the problem. I'm graduating and I'll be 17. He's like, oh, well, come to me when you're a senior. So I did. I waited, didn't go up there, do anything. And my senior year, I went up early that year. I went up and seen him and said, all right, what do I got to do? And he's like, your parents, because you're not 18, they've got to sign up. Yeah. And so I went to my mom. My mom and dad were divorced. And so I went to my mom and I said, hey, I got this paper. I didn't even have to get the whole thing out. I was just like, I want to join the Marine Corps. She goes, where do I need to sign it? Done. Because my uncle was her brother. So he knew, she knew, hey, that's a great plan. And so now I needed to get my dad to sign. Well, you talk about two people polar opposites on anything. And my dad's an Air Force veteran. He spent 10 years in the Air Force. His thing was, he wanted me to go to college. I knew from the get-go college wasn't my deal, was not going to happen. But he wanted me to go to college. He wanted me to become an officer. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? So then that strung up a whole nother list of questions. Like, well, what do you mean? Like, I just thought you joined, and when you were in long enough, you became an officer, or, that's what they assigned you. I really didn't know that much.
Sure.
And so I went to my recruiter and I'm like, hey, what is it? You know, my dad's saying he won't sign it. He wants me to go to college because he wants me to be an officer. I said, what is an officer? What's it? He's like, well, that's the guy in charge, and they go to college, then they go. And I'm like, yeah, no, like they're not the ones turning the wrenches.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I was a mechanic. I was already working on cars. And he's like, yeah, no, officers don't do that. They're like in charge. They do all the paperwork. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want anything to do with that. Nothing to do with that. And so I went back to my dad and I'm like, all right, look, I don't want to be an officer. I want to go in. I want to start at the ground level and work my way up and see how far I can get. And he's like, I'm not doing it. I think you need to go to college. I think that's a better decision for you. And we fought and argued for months before we finally, I think it was probably the third visit that my recruiter came, and, you know, that guy was relentless because he knew. I mean, I was breathing down my recruiter's neck weekly.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be a loophole, you know, like, can I do I go to the courts and get emancipated? Like, how do I go about this? Like, I have one signature. And so I think the third visit to the house, and I had 5 college offers that I rejected. And I refused to take the ACTs or the SATs, ACTs, all that college.
Yeah.
I refused to even take them. They sent the paperwork home, and my dad's like, hey, nope, I'm not, I don't need that. What I need is your signature. And then once I get my diploma, I'm in the Marine Corps. That's all I need.
Yeah.
And he finally did agree. I mean, against, you know, him wanting me to do it. So he signed, and I was able to finish, you know, it was almost, I think, 10 or 11 months I was in what they called the delayed entry program.
Right.
So I rogered up, did my initial swearing in, and then just had to do meetings with my recruiter until I actually shipped. And it was like, I requested like 2 months from the time that I graduated high school till I left for boot camp, just so that I could get that last little party and get to all my friends' graduation parties and stuff. But, you know, I did that, and I think I'd shipped out that August, beginning of August. But I went, it was actually on my 17th birthday, because that was that's when I depped in, because I had to be at least 17. He couldn't do it when he was 16. So we had dinner, my birthday cake, and my recruiter picked me up that night and drove me to the MEP station, and I did all the initial physical, all the ASVAB testing, you know, all the entry level stuff. And yeah, I mean, I guess the rest is history that we'll cover later. But yeah. My uncle, that is the main reason. And oddly enough, and I never realized it until after it had happened, was our boot camp pictures are very similar.
Yeah.
My grandma had an 8x10 of each one of us hanging on her wall, and most people that came in, other than you could see his photo, obviously was much older than mine, but most people like guessed it wrong as to which one was which one of us.
Right.
And
yeah, I will tell you that my experience was not even close to yours. I mean, I sat there and I graduated. Here's the first time I knew, or the military came into my brain, was I graduated high school the first week of June. And there was 1,500 people in my graduating class, and that'll come into the story in a.
We might have lost Mike, y'all. Oh, I think we did. Okay, well, I guess you all are stuck with me. So thank you, everybody. I know comments are flying by, guys, and we appreciate you being in here and putting the comments up. I'm sure as time goes, we're going to be able to be better at maintaining those comments. But this being our first live, this is what the point of the first live is going to be, is why we joined, and possibly getting some of you as veterans or family of veterans in to do interviews.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Hey.
Yeah, everything just went black. So I didn't, like I said, nothing like yours. I had graduation. We went to a senior graduation party at a place called Sugarloaf Hill out in the desert by Apache Junction, because I'm from Mesa, Arizona. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, did you bring a car?" And I said, "Yeah." A friend of mine's mom, she let me drive the car out here because I didn't drink. Okay. Until I joined the Army. I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, in the morning at 8 o'clock, I've got to be at the recruiters station downtown because I'm going to the Met station. I'm going to join the Army." And I said, "Wait, how come I didn't know about that?" And he goes, "Well, I just wanted to keep it quiet and everything." He goes, my family doesn't even know I'm doing this." I said, "Oh, wow." And so I drove him down there, and we went in there, and I said, "I'll wait outside here." I'm waiting out there, and this Marine comes out, a recruiter in this quad, and he comes out and he's smoking a cigarette and stuff. He goes, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes, "You're going to join those?" He goes, "You're going to join them bastards over there?" I said, "I'm not joining nothing. I just gave a buddy a ride." He goes, "You want a soda?" I said, "Sure, I'll take a soda." I went in there and had a soda. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "So you're a Marine?" I said, "I've never met a Marine in my life." And he's going, "Oh man, we are the coolest guys in the military." He goes, "We got everything. We got great looking uniforms," and he was decked out. All right, he was the station NCOIC, non-commissioned officer in charge of the thing, and he was a gunny sergeant, and he had ribbons and like he just went to a thrift store. You know what I mean? He was all decked out, and I'm going. I said, "Yeah, that is pretty cool and stuff like that." He goes, "You're tall and slender." He goes, "You look so good in this." And so my buddy goes, "Hey man, recruiter's going to take us to lunch." I said, "Man, a soda and a free lunch?" I said, "Yeah." So we're at lunch, and this guy talks to me, and he tells me about all these job opportunities and stuff like that. And he asked me what I plan to do. And I said, "I have no plans whatsoever. I'm working at Church's Fried Chicken. I'm making bank." Okay. And then on the weekends, I'm pumping gas at the Exxon station, And he goes, "Oh, really? Yeah." He goes and started talking to me about all this stuff. And he goes, "The money I'm going to be making and the training I'm going to do and stuff like that." And my buddy goes, "Man, come on." He goes, "I think I can get you in really quick. And y'all can go to basic together and do the same MOS and do the buddy, you guys will be battle buddies and stuff." Well, I go, crap. I'm thinking and stuff like that. I said, he goes, he's got to go to the Mets today, but he'll be in the hotel. And if you come back tomorrow, I can get you up there and I can get you tested. I can get your physical done. I can do all this stuff in one day and we can get you off. And I'm going, man, that's kind of rushing it and stuff like that. So I went back where I was living because I couch surfed like my whole high school career. I didn't live at home. And I called my uncle, who I knew was in the Navy. Well, he was in the Merchant Marines. And during Vietnam, the Merchant Marines shoved all the supplies to Vietnam, back and forth and back and forth. So he was always on the sea. And I called him and I said, "Hey, I was talking to this guy in the Army." He goes, "Oh, you did?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "But first I talked to this Marine." He goes, "You stay the hell away from them Marines." He goes, "Them's liars." I said, "What?" He goes, "They'll do anything to get you in." And I go, "Oh, I'm listening now." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "If it was me, he goes, I'd go over to the Air Force and see if the Air Force has anything for you. So I said, maybe I'll do that. I went over to the Air Force and they said, dude, you're so dumb. I can't take you in because like I said, I had 1,500 people in my class and I was number 897. So I wasn't part of the special kids and I wasn't part of the smart kids whatsoever. I couldn't even see those guys. And so they said, we can't take you, man. He goes, we can't take you. He goes, we don't really need you. So we can't take you because, you're not as smart as we want. I said, well, that sucks. So I went back to the Army and I called my uncle. I said, hey, they won't take me in there to the Air Force because I'm not smart enough because where I fit in my rankings in high school. He goes, oh. He goes, well, I will tell you, if you join the Navy, you're going to be lonely and you don't even know if you're going to be seasick and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, man. He goes, but if you go in the Army, go in as an MP. I said, why? He goes, Mike, I know you. He goes, you might as well be part of the criminals instead of them arresting you. I go, huh? He goes, yeah. He goes, you ain't got to worry about it. He goes, you're the one that handles that. And I'm going, huh? I said, that sounds pretty cool. He goes, so I said, hey, what about the MPs? He goes, well, let's get you into the ASFAB and take your ASFAB. So, like I said, 897 out of 1,500 kids, I take the ASFAB. I'm going, man, this is pretty cool stuff. And I was taking it. And back then, I think the max was like 130 on the ASFAB back then, back in the 70s. And he goes, man, you scored a 129. I said, wow. He goes, did it seem easy? I said, it actually seemed kind of fun. And he goes, oh, because your mechanical thing, scored high, everything scored high for you. And I said, I'm going to be an MP. And they said, okay, we'll sign you up. He goes, but you can't go with your buddy because your buddy's going to be a mechanic. I said, well, that's cool. And he showed me this video, MPs in their dress uniform with their gun. As soon as he said gun, I was like, I'm all in on this one. Right? Got the white hat and everything like that. And I said, man, that's pretty cool. They're making traffic stops and all that stuff. And I said, oh, this is pretty cool. So I said, I'm going to sign up for that. So I had saved all my money up. I was going to buy another car because I wrecked the first one in my junior year. And then I just bought a motorcycle. It was a Yamaha 650 Special. And they said, yeah. He goes, you're going to go to Fort McClellan, Alabama. He goes, I said, well, I've got my sister. I think I said my sister's wedding. And he said, well, you got to make sure we got to get you to, he kept saying Fort McClellan, Alabama. That's where the MP school is. And I said, man, I missed the bus. I went from Phoenix all the way back to Mesa, right, on a Greyhound. I went back. I got my motorcycle out. I drove from Mesa, Arizona to Fort McClellan, Alabama, which is almost on the Georgia side of Alabama. I drove that all day, all night. I think it was like 29 hours of driving. And I went all the way there. I looked around and I found the signs that said reception station because it was on my paperwork. And I got all the way there and I went inside and they said, what are you doing? I gave them my paperwork and they said, your people hasn't even showed up yet. And I'm going, so you're going to be in the reception station for about a week. And I said, wow. And so I just parked my bike out in the parking lot and started going through basic and all that kind of stuff. And every time we drive by the MEP station to go to a range and stuff, I'd see my bike parked out there. Well, one day it wasn't there no more. And I said, man, I was getting worried. So we had our first break from basic into AIT because it was one station training there. And so I went to the MP station and said, hey, I had a bike over here and I had my registration and everything. He says, it's in the impound lot. It's been sitting there for like, 9 weeks. So we impounded it. I said, well, it's mine. And so I was doing the paperwork and they said, what's your address? I said, I'm over here in Echo 10, Echo Company 10th Military Police Battalion. All of a sudden, those guys' ears turned up because you're not supposed to take a POV or nothing when you go to basic and stuff.
Right.
All that. All of a sudden, all I know is they had me there. These MPI agents, military police investigators came out. They're talking to me, blah, blah, blah. And back then, I was making $369 a month. All right.
Wow.
And I didn't have no rank. And I couldn't get an Article 15 or nothing like that because I didn't know you. I mean, no, you were in the service as soon as you raise your hand and say, I, Michael, do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution. You came the military and you were subject to the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I'm going, everybody's saying, oh man, they can't do nothing to you, man. You weren't in the military. Bull crap. They took that money for 2 payments. They took my 2 monthly paychecks for each month. And I had to be on extra duty. And I was cleaning out trash cans and the dumpsters behind a mess hall for 2 weeks. When we go out and do our drills and do all that stuff at night, after I ate, I went straight in there. And then I stayed up all night for 2 weeks straight, doing my boots and doing my locker, doing all that stuff for inspection. And I was tired. And then everybody got promoted and they said, no, not you, buddy. Your clock started all over again. So that was my first mistake. But I really didn't have any plans to ever go into the military, I wasn't smart enough to go to college. And I think that going into the military, it grew me up so much because my dad had died in 1972 and I was like 11 years old when he died. So it was one mom, 6 sisters. So my mom was raising 7 kids. And I guess I really kept hearing, we can't make it, and doing all this stuff. And it was driving me insane. And I guess if all that didn't happen, because there was times growing up in high school, I didn't have a place to stay. So there was the Exxon station I worked at on the weekends had a bench inside the thing where the employees could take a shower, and I slept on that bench for like 9 months. And so life was pretty much sucky, but then I'm going in there and everybody's complaining about, I said, man, I got a bed. I get to eat 3 times a day, and my family was so poor. We were on school lunch programs and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we had to have like the county health care plan and the county dental plan. And they just were like savages and stuff like that. And I do remember my first time I went and sat in a dentist chair in the Army. And the guy looked in my mouth and he goes, oh, you're from the south side of the tracks. I said, what? He goes, you come from a poor family? I said, yeah. He goes, I can tell by your dental work that you didn't pay a whole lot or nothing for it. I said, I remember a trailer pulling up in front of the school and all the poor kids stood in line so they could get a dental checkup and stuff like that. So for me, the lifestyle I was living, paying for everything and sleeping wherever I could sleep and stuff like that, not to be a burden on my mom and stuff like that. And we didn't have the greatest relationship and stuff like that. But the military really grew me up because I had no, nobody watching over me to tell me right from wrong. I just did whatever I wanted to do. And they really put purpose in my life. And I mean, I can't give them enough credit for doing that, even, you know, because they just basically popped my head out of my 6 o'clock because I was all about me and nobody else. And then I learned in there the value, because I played team sports and stuff like that. And it was kind of like that once you go into boot camp and everybody's from, I mean, they're from all over the United States and, you know, every ethnicity, color, I mean, everything. And I mean, people I'd never even seen in my life were in my basic training. I didn't even know there was people from India living in the United States and stuff like that. And it was just so inviting for me. I know a lot of people had problems with it and stuff like that. And they did everything they could to get kicked out, but I didn't want them to kick me out, you know? And it was just, I'll put it this way. It felt like I was home.
Yeah.
You know, I had a daddy and he was telling me what to do. He even showed me how to shave. He showed me how to lace my boots up properly. He showed me how to spit shine boots, how to put a crease in my britches and all that stuff. And I'm just like, oh man, they even taught me how to do laundry in basic, you know, separate your whites and this and that and on and on and on. It was just, I felt at home. And I think that if it wasn't for that, I couldn't even imagine where I'd be right now. But that's why I joined the military. I mean, it was not pre-thought out or I was influenced by somebody or anything like that. It was just, I really didn't have no place to go. And there was a lot of apprehension on my part. Then when I got in there, I said, man, this is awesome. You know, I really didn't care for all the running, you know,
yeah.
but I got used to it and stuff like that. I mean, I went into basic. I was 198 pounds, 6'4", 198 pounds. I left basic 6'4" and 160. You know what I mean? So
well, that was one thing that honestly through the whole adventure, like having my uncle like feeding my ear, you know, and if I had questions I could ask him,
right.
You know, but you know, he told me about his version of the Marine Corps, you know, especially at the time, like once I went to him and told him that I had signed up and I was going to go, you know, he was telling me all these things that he had did while he was in, you know, like how it was for him and what I could do, you know, because that was one of the big key things is he's like, look, the whole time you're in boot camp, do not volunteer for anything.
Yeah, never raise your hand. Never raise your hand.
And so I was in sports all through high school, played sports year round. And like my last 2 years of high school, on top of doing the sport event and practice or whatever, I was in the gym every single day. And, you know, and then of course doing construction, doing farming, you know, like I don't remember sleeping. I actually had a conversation with somebody not too long ago and I'm like, I don't remember what my childhood bedroom looked like, you know, even as my teen years, because I was never there. I was always out, like I was gone. I was doing all these things. And so physically I was ready for boot camp. I was like, man, I think what was I was 6 foot tall and 166 pounds, you know, just this, I look at it now and I'm like, holy, how did I not blow away in a strong wind?
Yeah.
You know, but I was strong. I mean, I actually had the school squat record for like a year or two at that point.
For your weight class.
No, for
really?
the person that squatted the most when
wow.
We had gotten a new football coach, head football coach, and he brought in a whole new weightlifting program. And he's like, how does someone so small? But I rode bicycles all over the place.
Oh, wow.
And so it always made it hard to find clothes because I had like massive thighs. So when it came to squatting and he's like, here's the form to do it, I was like, this is easy, put more on and just keep going.
Right.
But then I got to boot camp and I remembered the things that he had taught me and told me, and it was nothing like that. It had kind of softened up, in the time, because he'd been out for probably 8 or 10 years from when I decided from when I went in, and there was so many different changes.
Yeah.
And, but it's funny you talk about, like seeing other ethnicities and stuff. And,
Dude, I was shocked.
it was crazy. For like you said, you're getting people from all over the US and all different ethnicities. And, a quick boot camp story is, and not saying it in an offensive way, but that was the first time I seen an Asian kid. At this point, we're all kids, right? I seen an Asian kid shave. And I'm like, but I was looking at him and I'm like, what is he doing?
What's he shaving?
Right. Well, and that's like, he finally had asked one of us, because we were watching him and he lathered it up, but he took the razor and then was like just pushing the shaving cream off with it, because he didn't, it was this minor peach fuzz. But the drill instructors had told him, everybody's shaving, you have to shave. And he's like, but I don't have any facial hair. So he didn't even know how to use the razor. Like, we had to give him the class on, no, you have to, pull it. And, and I look back now, and there was so many things, like I said, that I did not even realizing I was doing it, prepping myself, because I was dead on. Like, there was nothing going to deter me that I wasn't going to join the Marine Corps. And when my recruiter said, hey, all you got to do at this point is just graduate, just get a good enough grade to graduate, which that's all I was doing anyways. College was not an option. And then when he asked me for the jobs, of course, he gave me I did the ASVAB, and I was so mad because that was my 17th birthday. He took me there that night, and then I got up the next morning. Well, computers were still pretty new.
Oh, yeah.
And so
I can't say that because we had none back in 78, 79. We had none.
And like, I'd seen them and worked on with them or whatever at school. And I think we had one at my dad's house, but it was, on the old dial-up. Like, you couldn't do nothing with that thing. And so when they sat me down to do the ASVAB, I did the pre-ASVAB and did really well because it was a paper copy. Well, it was on a computer screen. And I'm going through, and I've never been good at math, but I'm going through the questions, and it's multiple choice. And the answer that I'm coming up with on my little scratch pad is not any of those options. And I'm like, this can't be that bad. Like, what is going on? And so I just start guessing. Well, I get 3/4 of the way through the math section. When they do a fraction or you're dividing, right? It's a nowadays it's a slash. But back then on the computers, it was still the line with 2 dots.
Yeah.
Well, the screen, I guess, was fuzzy enough that I thought that was a plus sign every time that those types of questions came up. So instead of dividing them like I should have, so I'm like, great. I went back to my recruiter. I'm like, I probably failed. Like, I don't know what I'm, maybe I guess I'm going to be a cook or a grunt or something.
Yeah.
And I still scored high enough that I had a choice of whatever MOS.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, what MOS field do you want? And I said, well, I want something with mechanics. And, I don't know a lot about diesel trucks, but, like, they got them Humvees, and, I want to be able to, work on things. So he pulled up that MOS category, and I think there was like four or five different jobs. They were all mechanic jobs except for one, and it was an armorer. And I'm like, well, what is that? What is an armorer? Like, all these other ones are, it's clear, Humvee mechanic, but, whatever. And he's like, oh, well, that's the guy that works on weapons all day. And I'm like, what do you mean, like, works on them? Like, you're out shooting all day long? And he's like, no. Like, you're the guy that when they break the gun, they're going to bring it to you, you're going to fix it. And I'm like, yeah, no, next option. Like, I don't need that. I love guns, but I don't want to be fixing them all day long.
Yeah.
And then he found, we were going through the, like, chart, and there was, like, what was it listed as? combat or ordnance maintenance or something like that, where there was three. It was tanks, Amtraks, and LAVs. There was only 3 jobs in it, but they were all mechanics. So neither way, I was like, give me that one. And of course, I was worried though, because just like I've seen a lot of people comment in here, them recruiters are liars. They're gonna. So I took my paperwork and I'm like, all right, somebody else look at this. Like, did he screw me? And I took it to my uncle, and he looked, and he's like, no, you actually got that MOS or that category. And
yeah.
But yeah,
it's I will tell you that, like I said before, I never drank before I went into the military, and a guy named Wachowski from Madison, Wisconsin, I still remember him, gave me my first beer on our first off-post pass, and it was a PBR. And I said, this has got to be the god-awfulest stuff I've ever drank in my life. And then I got another guy named John from Oklahoma. He said, here, you need to try Budweiser. He goes, we call these Bud Reds. And I tried that, and I said, man, that's just as bad. And on and on and on. Before I know it, they were carrying me back to the base because I couldn't walk, because I've never drank a day in my life. And I got back and I woke up. It was on the weekend, and I just blew my whole weekend. And I woke up and I seen all these guys in Marshall, a guy named Marshall. They were in there because he slept above me, and he's from Detroit. And he goes, hey, Arizona. He goes, look like you got a little buzzed and stuff. And I said, well, I've never drank. He goes, you've never drank? He goes, I said, no, I've never had anything in my life. I said, those 3 beers just tore me up. And then they started laughing at me and stuff like that. And so he goes, well, sit down. I said, what are y'all doing? He goes, we're playing spades. I said, what? He goes, you don't know what spades is? I said, no. And he goes, you need to watch. And he was explaining it to me. So he taught me how to play spades. By the end of AIT, I was his partner.
Nice.
And his thing was, he goes, always go off my lead and stuff like that. So he did that. And then he goes, have you ever smoked before? And I said, no. And I said, no, that's god awful and stuff. He goes, you got to try these. These things here are Newports. He goes, these will change your life. Dude, I think there was a piece of pink lung laying on the floor when I did that. I said, man. Yeah. I said, I did a whole bunch of firsts when I went to basic training in AIT. And, it's, and I'll tell you, but I did dip. I started dipping when I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was off post, I got me a can of Copenhagen. And he goes, what? He goes, oh no. I said, you got to try it. I said, it's better than Newports. Mitchell was puking all over the table and stuff. So yeah, I remember those stories. They stay with you your whole life. But I will tell you that, in a nutshell, being in the military really reinforced my boys not to ever go in the military. They seen everything up front, and that's for another show. But it's just amazing. People in the military and I don't know how I want to say it, is the influence that they put on other people. You could do it in a bad way, or you can do it like your uncle in a positive way, that because he took so much pride in being in the military.
And that's the crazy part is most of the time we're doing it right just because how we're carrying ourselves, that we're influencing somebody else. And it was never at one point that I ever remember him telling me, oh, you need to join the Marine Corps, or, you know, like, or go in the military or do any of those things. But there's a difference. And I'd seen somebody else talk about it in there, was how, like, you know, the Marine Corps, like all their buddies that went in the Marine Corps came out taller, and all their buddies that went in the Army come out fatter. But I laugh because, you know, when I was at Fort Knox, like I said early on in the live, was we were surrounded by soldiers. We were a very small 2, 3, maybe 400 at the most detachment of Marines around like thousands of Army soldiers and recruits and stuff. And so when we got, because like we didn't, you know, we did you do boot camp, and then you do, if you're not infantry, you'll go to like infantry, a short infantry course, and then you go to your MOS school. Well, they're all in different locations.
Yeah.
And, you know, so being at Fort Knox, of course, we went to Louisville all the time to party, hang out, go to the clubs. And, you know, I never understood, like, I thought carried myself pretty well. And then when I went home after boot camp, there were a few other people that were like, okay, you know, you're walking a little taller, you know, but you carry a pride because you accomplished a major feat. But being in those clubs in Louisville, it shocked me that the soldiers knew. And even the civilians that were in there, you know, like they would know the difference just by the way you walked in of whether you were a Marine or a soldier.
Yeah.
You know, and it ran us into a couple tiffles with the soldiers there, because they're like, you guys aren't welcome here. And we're like, well, according to that bouncer that took my money, we are. So I think we're good. You know, it's crazy. But that's what I love about it, especially when you get with, you know, other vets, is everybody's story is different of why they came in, or, you know, why they joined, why they did it, why they stayed in for as long as they did, or even the things that led up to it.
Yeah. But I will tell you, just in closing, that, you know, being part of the military, or, you know, if you're a Marine in the Army as a soldier, if you're an airman, or if you're a seaman in the Navy, you know, you have a bond that will never be broken. It's okay for you to make fun of, like me, another Army guy, or, you know, you're making fun of them, or you're doing whatever, but nobody else can do it. You know, it's kind of like a family. You can talk about your brothers and sisters, but if somebody else says that, they're getting their ass handed to them. And that's the same thing when you're, you know, you could go to a bar, and the Army's fighting the Marines, or the Marines are fighting the Navies. But when things came together, I don't care what branches of service that you had, that, you know, that they had your back, you know, and that will never change. And I see that with veterans. Okay. They're from every branch of the service and stuff, like whether you're sitting at the VFW, the American Legion, or you belong to an organization outside of those, you know, when they come together hard. And that's something, you know, there's a saying, if I call you brother, that means I've got your back. And that goes for everybody that served. And it is a bond. I mean, if you played football in high school and you had a successful team or whatever, you know, you remember those guys for the rest of your life. And that's the same thing with the military. You make brothers and sisters for the rest of your life. And that's what I love about it. Were there bad times? Oh, you bet. You bet there were some bad times. But we'll get to that. If you come and join us next week, we're going to be talking about boot camp. Myths, lies, whatever you want to call it, but we're going to talk about boot camp and what you can expect when you go to boot camp. Okay, it's different from the way the Marines do it, and the way the Armies do it, and the way the Air Force does it, and the way the Navy does it. It's crazy, the differences and what you call things and what you do. But next week is boot camp. I hope everybody comes back to the channel so we can talk about that. If you've got experiences about boot camp, put it in the chat next week. And Guy, I had blast tonight. I mean, this did something awesome for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, you got any closing remarks you want to make?
I just appreciate all of you that are coming out and supporting us in this. We're excited to see where this goes, guys. You know, it's something that's been pulling on Mike and I both from multiple different angles, and to finally get it to come together just is amazing, because as you said, and kind of reiterating, is that brotherhood is there, you know, and especially amongst veterans, because at that point your branch of service doesn't matter anymore. You know, exactly. There's a pride and there is a thing that goes with it, but it's just the fact that you served. And, you know, because there is a bond, it's an unwritten bond that most of the time you can't even speak about unless you're with other veterans.
Right.
And I think that's what's the most exciting about this. And then getting to be able to see more people, you know, through the chat and through the comments and stuff. And as we start to bring people up later on, and getting to hear their stories and their, you know, because a lot of them, you know, y'all might be afraid to talk about that kind of stuff, but there's a comfort of being able to talk with brothers and sisters and, you know, not be afraid of, oh, I said this or that or whatever.
Right.
It's awesome. So we appreciate every single one of you that came in. You all are amazing and rock, and we appreciate you.
Hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we welcome you to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell if you could, and hit the like button before you leave out of here. But
make sure to share it out. Share it out, guys. Put it out on your Facebooks. Put it out on your YouTubes. Any kind of social media platform. Because
community page is a very powerful thing within your channel, and we appreciate, because we want to get as many veterans in here. Also, we want everybody in here. Okay. And we will answer honestly every question that people hand to us. It might be that I'm going to have to either get contacts or wear my glasses all the time, because I see like a blur. I see a Tasha Lynn in here. I see Cora Phelps, Melinda Dobson. Wait a minute. Jeannie Lipsky's in here. So, hey, if you share it out on your community page, it'll get out there. If you know a veteran, hey, give them our channel name and stuff like that, and invite them to join. But we love you guys. You know, I always say this on my channel, and I didn't want to repeat what I say at the end, but I do. You know, if you see a vet, you know who they are. You go to the Walmart, you go to the store or whatever, and they're wearing their hats and they're wearing their ship that's on their hats and stuff like that. And they were in Desert Storm, you know, Iraqi freedom, yada, yada, yada. Just say hello to them, shake their hand, thank a vet, because it's well-deserved on their part. And you know what, in closing, it always made me uncomfortable when someone thanked me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you say? Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Let me show you this.
Definitely, it takes some time. I think that's probably one of the hardest transitions of not being in, is getting that now, because, you know, and I know we're closing, but, you know, most of us don't do it for the glory and the recognition. Like, I'm fine just being in my little hole. So it's even a big step to come out. I mean, I've talked about it on our channel, but, you know, that thinking of vet, I mean, it's, you have to figure out how to receive it, you know, but once you do realize, like, it means a lot. It really does.
I'm so quick about saying it to a veteran, but I to this day, you know, them thanking me is, you know, but I always do it. I'll go across the Walmart to get to a guy. Terry goes, "Where are you going?" She'll see the guy. She goes, "Okay, never mind. That's where he's going." All right, guys. Hey, thanks for coming in here. Remember, think of that every chance you get. We love you, and we'll see you on the next video.
Bye, guys.